stamped it, and dropped it in the mailbox with the flag up like a beacon. And for the first time in years, I felt a kind of wholeness that didn't ask permission to exist. Not because everything was fixed, not because I'd been forgiven, but because love, when planted with care, has a way of finding its way back home. Charlie showed up on a Saturday just after noon. I heard the crunch of his bicycle tires before I saw him. He'd pedaled all the way from town, backpack bouncing on his shoulders, cheeks flushed from wind and maybe a little anticipation. He was taller now, voice deeper, but still wore that same ball cap backward like he did when he was 10 and thought it made him look cool but wise. "You made good time," I said, stepping off the porch. He grinned a little out of breath. Didn't want to be late. I offered him a glass of lemonade. He downed it in 3 gulps. Then without ceremony, he said, "Can we fish, as long as you don't outcatch me?" Challenge accepted. We headed down to the dock poles in hand, a small tackle box rattling with old lures between us. The lake was glassy, with a few lazy ripples where fish rose to tease us. The trees around us were painted in the colors only October could pull off: burnt orange, deep red, and gold so bright it nearly hummed. Charlie baited his hook without instruction, sat beside me without fidgeting. He'd grown, not just taller, wider in the soul. We cast our lines and let the quiet settle. I've always believed that fishing isn't about catching anything, it's about permission. Permission to be quiet, permission to not perform, permission to just be. And today that permission stretched wide between us. After a while, Charlie spoke. "You remember that summer when we couldn't catch anything for like 3 weeks, I do? You blamed it on the fish being on vacation." He chuckled. "Still sounds logical. Logical enough, I agreed." He leaned back on his elbows, looking out over the water. "I didn't come to say sorry," he said. "Not because I'm not sorry, just I didn't want today to be about that. I understand. I came because I missed you," he said simply, "and because I wanted to remember what it feels like to be near someone who didn't expect me to be anything but myself." That hit me deeper than any apology could have. "Charlie," I said, "you were never the one I was angry at." I know he nodded. "But sometimes I was angry too. That you left. That no one explained anything. That the house got quiet and Mom got weird and Derek got gone." I nodded. "You had a right to all those feelings. I didn't know what to do with them," he said, "so I shoved them down. Drew comics, wrote bad poetry, played drums in my closet with pencils." "Sounds healthy enough," I said. He laughed. "Now I know feelings don't disappear just because you don't talk about them. They just hide under the bed until they grow teeth." "That they do," I said. We sat a while longer, caught 2 small bass, released both. Charlie opened a bag of sunflower seeds and offered me some. I declined. He kept munching spitting shells into the water with the ease of someone who'd had too many long afternoons and not enough people to talk to. Finally, he looked at me and asked, "Do you think people can really change?" I took a breath. "Yes," I said, "but not overnight, and not to become someone else. Just to become more of who they were always meant to be." He nodded like he was storing that away for later. When the sun began to drop behind the trees, we packed up our gear. At the top of the hill near the cabin, Charlie paused and looked back over the lake. "You ever get lonely out here?" "Sometimes," I said honestly, "but not the kind of lonely that hurts. More like, space. A kind of quiet that lets things grow again." He turned to me. "I think I'd like to come back. The porch will be here," I said. "And there's always bait in the shed." That night after he'd gone, I sat with a blanket over my knees and a cup of warm tea. The dock was empty again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt held, anchored, like something that had once drifted was now slowly finding its way home. And in the silence, I whispered a thank you to the stars. Not just for Charlie, but for the quiet between us that said everything words never could. I didn't expect them to come back. But early one afternoon in late November, I got a call. "It's Amanda," she said. "Charlie and we're near town. Thought maybe we could swing by the old place." You free I was. More curious than anything else. We met in front of the Renfield Renewal Home. The old house looked different now. Not just in paint or porch rails, but in spirit. It breathed differently, lived differently. Where there was once silence and tension, now there were wind chimes, flower boxes, and a welcome mat that actually meant what it said. 3 people stood outside raking leaves. One waved. Amanda waved back. Charlie looked up at the shutters, the roofline, the second-floor window that used to be his bedroom. He was taller than the front steps now. That alone made my heart ache. "We used to sit out here every 4th of July, Amanda said quietly. "Hot dogs and sparklers and Mom's potato salad. You hated the onions in it," I said. "I always picked them out." We laughed softly. "I used to think this house was permanent," she added. "Like no matter what happened in our lives, it would just hold." "But houses don't hold people," I said. "People hold people." She looked over at me. I didn't understand that until I let it all go. We asked the manager, a gentle woman named Carla, if we could walk through the main floor. She agreed, warm and smiling. "It's your history too," she said. The layout was the same, but the air was different, lighter. Walls once dulled by time were now bright with artwork from kids and residents alike. The dining room table that once held arguments over bills now held board games and coffee cups. "This used to be the room where I said the worst thing I've ever said to you," Amanda whispered. "You were hurting," I replied. "I was cruel," she said, looking at the window. "But you stayed long enough for me to learn the cost of that." We walked quietly through the rest. In the kitchen, Charlie pointed to the corner near the fridge. "I knocked out my front tooth right there," he said, trying to ride my scooter indoors. I chuckled. "You screamed like someone had cut your leg off." "I got ice cream for dinner," he grinned. Back on the porch, Amanda leaned on the railing. "I kept thinking for a long time," she said, "that coming back here would undo all the work, like I'd fall apart again, like I'd turn into the woman I used to be." "But you didn't?" I said. "No," she nodded. "I didn't." She turned to me. "That's how I know I've changed. And that's why I brought Charlie," she added. "I wanted him to see it. Not the pain, but the moving forward." Charlie looked between us, thoughtful. "I don't remember all the bad stuff," he said. "Just pieces. But I remember you, Granddad. And I remember when you left, I thought, maybe the world didn't make sense anymore." Amanda looked at him, then at me. But now Charlie continued, "I think maybe leaving was the most honest thing you could have done." That boy had always known more than he let on. As we walked back to our cars, Amanda stopped me one last time. "Do you ever wish we could go back?" I thought about that. About Sunday pancakes, about Lillian humming in the garden, about the day the locks were changed and the silence started. "No," I said. "But I'm grateful we made it through," she nodded. "I think so too." Charlie reached out and slipped his hand into hers, simple, quiet, like when he was small. And in that moment, I realized we hadn't come back to reclaim anything. We'd come to remember and to release. The invitation came in the form of a folded cardstock note left by my breakfast plate, cream-colored with a deep green trim, my name printed in bold. Inside it read, "First Annual Gathering of the Renfield Renewal Home, November 18th, 6 Huero p.m. We would be honored to have you deliver the opening remarks. Carla." I stared at the paper for a long while, my coffee growing cold beside it. It wasn't the event that caught my breath. I'd seen enough community dinners to know what to expect, but the way she phrased it, "we would be honored," not "we need you to," not "you should," but honored. It was the first time I'd seen my name tied to that house, not as a cautionary tale or a shadow from the past, but as a foundation. Depressé. I almost said no. Public speaking wasn't my thing, and besides, what did I have to say? But Amanda nudged me gently. "You don't have to impress anyone," she said. "Just tell the truth. You're good at that now." So I said yes. 10. The community hall had seen its share of potlucks, elections, and revivals. But that night, it looked like something sacred. Twinkle lights strung from beam to beam, folded programs at every seat, rows of folding chairs polished until they gleamed like pews. At the front was a small wooden podium trimmed with greenery and a hand-painted sign that read, "Built by hands, held by hearts." I waited in the back until Carla introduced me. She kept it short. A man who once lived within those walls, a man who left with dignity, and a man who helped us believe that places can be redeemed just like people. I walked to the front, every step measured. No microphone. Just the room. I cleared my throat and spoke the only way I knew how, slowly, plainly, truthfully. I used to live in that house on Renfield Road. Not in the version you know now with the wildflowers and music and paint that doesn't peel. No, I lived in it when the shutters were always closed and the kitchen felt colder than the wind outside. It was a good house once. Full of love. Full of stories. But like anything left untended, it changed. So did we. We let pride stay longer than grace. We let silence grow louder than care. We let resentment build walls between us until one day there wasn't any room left for love to stand. And I walked away. Not in anger, but in grief. Because sometimes the most honest thing a person can do is leave. To stop pretending. To stop enabling. To stop erasing themselves for the comfort of others. The room was quiet. Even the clink of forks and cups had gone still. I looked up and found Amanda in the third row sitting next to Charlie, both leaning forward, not blinking. So I kept going. When Carla and her team turned that house into the renewal home, I'll admit I stayed away. I was afraid of what it would stir up. Memories I couldn't fix, mistakes I couldn't undo. But I came back. One quiet day, and I saw something I didn't expect. I saw laughter. I saw someone reading on the front steps. I saw dignity being rebuilt, board by board, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. That house, it's no longer mine. but somehow it holds a better version of me than I ever left behind. That's the strange gift of healing. It doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. Someone sniffled, a chair creaked, but no one spoke. I looked at the back wall, then back to the crowd. If you've ever thought it was too late to say sorry, too late to come home, too late to forgive or be forgiven, let me tell you something. It's not. It is never too late to be what you might have been. A pause, and then soft at first, then louder applause. Not the kind you give a performance, the kind you give a person, for surviving, for standing up, for choosing to tell the truth. Afterward, people came up to shake my hand. Some just nodded. One young man hugged me tight and said, "That's the story I never heard from my father. Thank you for telling it." Carla pulled me aside near the kitchen. Her eyes were full. "That she said was why we kept your name on the deed." I blinked. "You what?" She smiled. "The property belongs to the foundation now, but your name is on the cornerstone plaque. We never removed it. We just waited for it to mean something different." That night, I sat back on my porch watching the stars scatter across the sky. For the first time in decades, I felt unburdened. Not by vindication, but by clarity. The house didn't define me. But what I'd chosen to do after it broke me, that did. Some mornings now, I wake up before the sun and just listen. Not for birdsong, not for footsteps, but for the stillness that comes when your heart is no longer racing to prove its worth. I brew a cup of tea, sit on the steps of the old porch, and wrap myself in a shawl Lillian left behind last winter, soft-worn, smelling faintly of lavender and lemon balm. And I think. About everything that led me here, about who I was before I knew better, and the long, winding road it took to become who I was always meant to be. People often ask if I feel healed now, as if healing were a destination you arrive at, bags unpacked, wounds neatly stitched. But I think healing is something quieter. It's walking past the old scar without flinching. It's making tea for your daughter even when she forgets to say thank you. It's planting flowers in the same soil where something once withered and saying, "Grow anyway." I used to carry shame like a second spine, always bracing for the moment someone would point to my past and ask, "Who do you think you are to begin again?" But now I know. I'm someone who stayed, even when it would have been easier to vanish. I'm someone who listened, even when no one else was speaking kindly. I'm someone who rebuilt not because I had to, but because I chose to. Last week, Charlie helped me repaint the porch swing. He picked green because it feels like a beginning. I didn't argue. We ate ham sandwiches and wiped paint off our shoes and didn't talk much, but everything was said anyway. Amanda sends me soup sometimes. Too much garlic, but it warms the belly. She always writes, "Hope it feels like home" on the lid. And you know what? It does. Not because of the recipe, but because of the return. Renfield Renewal Home continues to thrive. I still visit once a month, not as a reminder of what was lost, but as a witness to what has grown. I sit with the veterans and the wanderers and the ones who thought no one would ever come back for them, and I say gently, "Sometimes the ones who leave are the only ones who saw the fire coming." They nod, not always right away, but eventually, because truth, like time, always makes its way in. One of the residents there, her name is May, asked me last time what I'd tell my younger self. I thought about that a long time, and then I said, "Don't be afraid to walk away from what's breaking you, even if it looks like love." She wrote it down, and then she smiled, like maybe she'd waited 40 years to hear someone say it. This morning a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized the careful slant of the handwriting. It was from someone I never thought I'd hear from again, Derek. Just one line. No apology. Just this: "I'm sorry it took me this long to see what you were trying to protect us from. I'm working on myself. I hope that means something." And strangely, it did. Not because I needed it, but because he finally did. I may never be the kind of man whose name ends up in history books or whose words echo in grand halls, but I have my porch, my lake, my story. And now and then, a knock at the door from someone who needs to borrow a little hope. And that's enough. More than enough. I once read a line that stuck with me like bark on a tree. "It is never too late to be what you might have been." George Eliot, I think of that often. Not as a rallying cry, but as a quiet promise. To myself, to those I love, to anyone out there sitting alone at a window wondering if it's too late. It's not. You're not. There's still room, still time, still hope. So if you've made it this far in the story, thank you. Not just for listening, but for believing that stories like mine matter. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in mine. Maybe you needed to hear that people can change, that silence can be broken, that dignity can return, that you can return. And if it stirred something in you, if it lit even the smallest candle, then let it glow, and pass it on. Because someone else out there is still sitting in the dark, wondering, like, share. Leave a comment, not for me, but for her story, for yours, for every second chance that starts with a quiet, stubborn kind of love. And remember, it is never too late to be what you might have been. Not yesterday, not even today, but now, right now.